From the moment we are born, we are surrounded by stories, beliefs, and experiences that, little by little, shape the way we see ourselves and understand the world. But there is something that few people realize. The identity we carry is not an immutable reflection of the past. It is, above all, the result of the choices we make. Many people live trapped in the idea that they are defined by what has already happened to them, that their pain, failures, and successes form an unbreakable track they must follow. But this is an illusion that imprisons, a cycle that reinforces the idea that we are merely the product of events beyond our control. The truth is that, at every moment, we have the opportunity to decide who we want to be. The past is not a sentence, it is a lesson. You may have suffered losses, faced challenges, made mistakes, but none of that has to determine your future. What truly matters is not what happened, but how you choose to respond to it. The key to transforming your life lies precisely in this awareness, that every decision shapes your path. Some believe that destiny is already written, that there is no way to escape what has been predetermined. But this is a limited perspective. Jungian psychology teaches us that we are much more than mere spectators of events. We are agents of our own transformation. And this transformation begins when we recognize that the way we interpret events is more powerful than the events themselves. If you define yourself only by external circumstances, you will never have control over your own narrative. But if you understand that your response to these circumstances is what truly matters, then you will be taking the first step toward becoming who you choose to be. The great trap is believing that change happens automatically, as if one day we simply wake up different. But that's not how it works. Becoming aware of your own power of choice requires effort, self-knowledge, and above all, responsibility. Because when we accept that we are the architects of our own identity, we can no longer blame the past, other people, or circumstances for what we have become. This may be frightening for some, but it is also liberating. If we are constantly one step away from a different life, why do so many people remain in the same place? The answer lies in conditioning, in unconscious patterns that control our actions without us realizing it. Many times we continue reacting to situations automatically, without reflecting on the reasons behind each response, without understanding that we are merely repeating old habits, as if trapped in an endless cycle. And this is where we begin to realize the true power of self-knowledge. When we pause to question our own choices, we open the door to something new, to real change. If change were that simple, it would be enough to decide, and everything would transform in an instant. But why then do so many people remain stuck in the same patterns, the same mistakes, the same frustrations? The answer lies in the deeper layers of the mind, in the unconscious mechanisms that guide much of our behavior. Most of the choices we make are not truly conscious choices, but automatic responses, conditioned over the years. What we call life is often just a repetition of old habits and deeply rooted beliefs that dictate how we think, feel, and react. Our subconscious is a powerful machine, capable of influencing every detail of our existence without us realizing it. From an early age, we absorb beliefs from our parents, from society, from the culture around us. And without noticing, we start acting according to these beliefs, repeating patterns that we never consciously chose. If someone grows up hearing that the world is cruel, that money is hard to earn, or that love always hurts, they will likely carry these ideas throughout their life, constantly recreating experiences that confirm these beliefs. The subconscious does not question, it simply executes what has been programmed. This is why many people feel like they are living in an endless cycle, facing the same problems repeatedly, attracting the same types of relationships, going through the same challenges. It's not bad luck. It's not destiny. It is simply the reflection of what is running in the background of their minds. Einstein once said that insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And that is the essence of what happens when we fail to become aware of our own patterns. We keep reacting in the same way, expecting that somehow everything will change. But transformation does not happen from the outside in. It begins when we bring to light what is operating on autopilot, when we observe our reactions and question the reason behind each one of them. If you feel like your life is stuck in a repetitive cycle, the first step is to do something most people avoid. Look inward. Observe your thoughts, your emotions, your impulses, and ask yourself, why do I act this way? Where did this belief come from? Does this truly reflect who I am, or is it just a program I accepted without questioning? This is the starting point for reprogramming your mind and taking control of who you choose to become. And real transformation happens not only by identifying these patterns, but by replacing them. It is possible to create new habits, new ways of thinking, new responses to life's situations. But this requires repetition, persistence, and a conscious decision to no longer live on autopilot. The unconscious mind will continue trying to pull you back into your old comfort zone because that's what it knows. But each time you act differently, each time you choose a new path, you are writing a new story. And this is where we reach the next level. Understanding that happiness and fulfillment do not lie in the absence of problems, but in the presence of purpose. Because even when we learn to reprogram our responses and take control of our minds, we will still face challenges. And what truly gives us the strength to keep going is something much greater than simply changing habits. It is the pursuit of meaning. When we begin to become aware of the patterns that hold us back and learn to reprogram our responses, a new challenge arises. What is the true purpose behind this transformation? Because it is not enough to simply change habits or reconfigure the mind if there is no real meaning behind it all. True change does not happen just when we abandon old patterns, but when we find something greater to guide us. Happiness is not a constant state, nor a finish line. Often we think we will be happy when we reach a certain goal, when we have more money, when we find the ideal partner, when we achieve success. But how many times have we reached something we longed for, only to feel empty shortly afterward? This happens because momentary happiness does not have the power to sustain a meaningful life. What truly keeps us strong in the face of challenges is not the pursuit of immediate pleasure, but the construction of a purpose that gives us reasons to keep going, even when things don't go as planned. And here lies an essential aspect of Jungian psychology, the process of individuation. Jung believed that true fulfillment comes when we become who we really are, when we let go of the masks imposed by society and begin to live authentically. But to do so, we must ask ourselves, what is the meaning of my existence? What drives me? What makes me wake up every day with the will to move forward? Many people believe that purpose is something grand, something reserved for a few. But the truth is that purpose does not mean changing the world in a spectacular way. It can be found in small things, in the way we help someone, in the work we do, in how we relate to others. When we find real meaning in our lives, we face challenges differently. We do not run from pain or avoid difficult moments because we know that every obstacle is part of the journey. And here is a crucial point. Happiness is not the absence of sadness, just as light cannot exist without darkness. We live in a society that teaches us to seek only the good side of things, to flee from pain, to avoid suffering at all costs. But this weakens us. True growth happens when we learn to deal with difficulties, when we find meaning even in the most challenging moments. When we have a purpose, we face life with more courage. We do not let ourselves be shaken easily because we know that something greater is guiding us. And this completely changes our relationship with the past, the present, and the future. If before we carried pain and regrets, now we understand that everything was part of the process. If before we feared tomorrow, now we realize that each day is a new opportunity to build something meaningful. And when we understand this, something powerful happens. We begin to see challenges not as obstacles, but as opportunities. Because everything depends on how we choose to interpret events. And this shift in perspective is what takes us to the next level, understanding that it is not what happens to us that defines our lives, but rather how we choose to perceive each situation. The way we interpret events has a far greater impact than the events themselves. Two people can go through the same experience and come out of it with completely opposite perceptions. What may seem like a devastating failure to one person can be an opportunity to start over with more wisdom for another. This happens because it is not external reality that defines us, but the lens through which we choose to see it. Our mind has the power to turn any experience into something positive or negative, depending on how we react to it. A problem is not just a problem. It can be a test, a lesson, an invitation to grow. A mistake is not just a mistake. It can be a warning, a course correction, an opportunity for evolution. But for this shift in perception to occur, we must first understand that we are the only ones responsible for how we see the world. Many times we remain trapped in narratives of suffering because we have become accustomed to seeing things through a negative lens. We grow up hearing that life is hard, that the world is unfair, that some people are just lucky while others are destined for failure. But none of this is an absolute truth. These are merely interpretations, stories we tell ourselves, and they become our reality because we choose to believe in them. This does not mean denying challenges, pretending everything is perfect, or ignoring pain when it arises. On the contrary, it means understanding that the way we respond to difficulties determines the direction of our lives. When we resist change, cling to the past, or insist on seeing only the negative side of things, we create a cycle of suffering that perpetuates itself. But when we accept that every experience can hold a greater meaning, that every difficulty can teach us something, we begin to see life with new eyes. Everything that happens to us passes through the filter of our perception, and this filter can be adjusted. We can train our minds to seek new perspectives, to see possibilities where we once saw limitations. This does not happen overnight. It is a process that requires awareness and practice. The more we become mindful of how we interpret the world, the more we can shape our reality in a positive way. And this shift in perception does not just transform our own lives, it also changes how we relate to others. Just as we interpret events subjectively, we also interpret people this way. Often we judge others without truly knowing them, project our own insecurities onto them, and create stories about who they are without understanding their real intentions. When we learn to question our own vision, we also learn to be more empathetic, to look beyond appearances, and to build deeper and more authentic connections. And this is exactly where we enter a new level of understanding. When we stop being prisoners of our automatic perceptions, we begin to see both ourselves and others more clearly. And this leads us to the next step, understanding that the judgments we make about people and situations say more about ourselves than about them. As we learn to see the world more consciously, we realize something essential. The way we judge others directly reflects what we have yet to understand about ourselves. Everything that irritates us, bothers us, or makes us uncomfortable in others can actually be a mirror of something that exists within us, something we have yet to acknowledge. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the unconscious part of our personality where we store everything we do not want to accept about ourselves. Often, when we harshly criticize someone, when we strongly reject certain traits or behaviors, we are projecting aspects of our own shadow. This does not mean that other people's mistakes are irrelevant or that we should accept any kind of behavior, but it does mean we should ask ourselves, why does this affect me so much? What does this say about me? Is there something within me that I have not yet recognized? This self-reflection exercise can reveal profound truths about our own character. Judgment is often born from the need to feel superior. When we point out others' flaws, we may unconsciously be trying to reaffirm our own identity, as if saying, I would never do that. But the reality is that, under different circumstances, we might do exactly the same thing. When we understand this, empathy is born. We begin to see people with more compassion, understanding that everyone is fighting their own internal battles, that no one is perfect, and that everyone, at some point, makes mistakes. This does not mean justifying wrong actions, but rather understanding the complexity of human nature. We all have both light and shadow within us. We all carry insecurities, fears, traumas, and unconscious patterns that influence our actions. And the more we recognize this within ourselves, the more we become capable of looking at others without the weight of judgment. Looking inward is an act of courage. It requires us to confront our own mistakes, to accept the parts of ourselves we prefer to ignore. But only by doing this can we free ourselves from the chains of ego, pride, and the need to always be right. When we stop judging others impulsively, something powerful happens. We also stop judging ourselves so harshly. Because much of the burden we carry comes from excessive self-criticism, from the fear of making mistakes, from the worry that we are not good enough. But when we accept that making mistakes is part of the journey, that we are all in a constant process of learning, we begin to treat ourselves with more kindness. And when we treat ourselves with more kindness, our relationship with the world transforms. This shift in perspective takes us to a deeper level of self-understanding. Because when we stop looking outside for validation or approval, we begin to look within and trust our own intuition more. And this is where true freedom emerges, living without the need to fit into others' standards, without fear of being who we truly are. And this brings us to the final and most important point, understanding that our actions speak much louder than our words, that it does not matter what we say about who we are, but rather what we choose to do, day after day. In the end, what truly defines who we are is not what we think, believe, or say. It is what we do. Life does not transform through empty intentions or postponed promises, but through action. The difference between those who change their reality and those who remain stagnant is not desire. It is the ability to act, to turn thoughts into movement, to make decisions that reflect who they truly want to be. We live in a world where many people talk too much and do too little, where plans are made but never executed, where dreams are cultivated in the mind but never leave the paper. But what truly matters is not what someone says they will do, but what they choose to do every single day. In the end, we are defined by our actions, by the small daily gestures, by the habits we cultivate, by the way we handle each situation. And here arises an essential question. If we know this, why do we often let inertia take over? Why do we postpone changes we know are necessary? Why do we remain in cycles that harm us, even knowing we could choose differently? The answer lies in fear, in resistance to transformation, in the comfort of the familiar. The human brain has a natural tendency to avoid the unknown. Even when something hurts us, if we are already accustomed to it, we prefer to stay there rather than face uncertainty. This is why so many people cling to toxic relationships, exhausting jobs, and self-sabotaging habits. Because change requires effort. It requires facing initial discomfort. It requires accepting that at first it may be difficult. But the truth is that life happens in action. You do not become a different person simply by thinking about it. You become someone different when you act differently. When you make decisions that reflect your new worldview. When you begin to behave according to who you wish to become. And this does not mean taking giant leaps all at once, but rather starting where you are, with what you have, and doing something today. The power of transformation does not lie in grand moments of inspiration, but in the consistency of small daily acts. In the simple choice to be a better version of yourself, day after day. In the courage to say no to what no longer serves you and yes to what truly helps you grow. Many people spend their lives waiting for the right moment to act, waiting to have more time, more money, more energy, more confidence. But that perfect moment never arrives, because change never happens before action. It happens because of action. And when you understand this, you realize that you don't need anything more than the decision to start. You realize that there is no secret, no magic formula, no perfect path. There is only one choice, to stay where you are or to start moving. And that choice is yours. It always has been. It always will be. If this message resonated with you, if at any moment in this video you felt like you needed to hear this today, then you already know. Change starts now. You have in your hands the power to become who you choose to be. And if this content made sense to you, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this too. That way, you help me continue bringing reflections like this, and together we spread this message to more people. See you in the next video. If this message resonated with you, if at any point in this video you felt that you needed to hear this today, then you know, change starts now. You have the power in your hands to become whoever you choose to be. And if this content made sense to you, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it too. That way, you help me to continue bringing reflections like this, and together we can spread this message to more people. See you in the next video.